What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jared. Mandalorian episode 8 just dropped. It's early in the morning. I have no idea why that water heater is turned on, so hopefully the sound, you guys can hear me. But yes, this episode, episode 7 left us, kind of on a cliffhanger because there was a lot going on in this episode with them being pinned down by the Imperials coming for Baby Yoda and whatnot. And I think, obviously this is the last episode, episode 8. And I think that it spoiler-free, it finished up the plot line or the through line of this first season. I think it was very satisfying, and it ended in a fantastic manner. There's some spectacle, there's a lot of action. This very much sets things up for obviously a season 2. We see a lot of things that we've been waiting this whole season for. So I would say that this episode 8 really turned things around and ended in a satisfying manner. Getting into the spoilers, though, of this episode, right off the bat, we find out that Queel from the previous episode has died. I had a feeling that was going to happen, but then we have this kind of comedic, this is a very action-packed episode, but there's two kind of comedic beats that didn't entirely land, and it's this first scene with these two speeder troopers, I guess, going back and forth with each other, and in the credits it makes sense because it's Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally, I believe, from the MIDI project, so their back and forth is very much more comedic driven in this episode. But moving on, this is an action-packed episode because the IG droid actually rescues Baby Yoda. So it gets the Baby Yoda, and they're back in the fold, I guess. It's the Mando, Cara Dune, Carl Weathers' character, and then the IG droid and Baby Yoda. But we find out that this Imperial officer, I guess, his name is Moff Gideon, I believe, and he actually knows who all of these people are. He knows who Cara Dune is, and we also find out he knows who the Mandalorian is, who his name is Din Djarin, I believe, and I think that's the first time we find out that someone knows who the Mandalorian is, who he was before he was adopted into the Mandalorian culture, essentially. And then it kind of does a quick flashback. And, we've been getting this flashback of these super battle droids this whole entire season. And I thought that the reason he didn't like droids is obviously because of that scene, which makes sense. And I also thought that maybe Kenobi or Yoda, someone, a lightsaber at some point would show up, and that's who would save him. But we see who saves him. Those doors break open, and it's the silhouette of another Mandalorian. And I was like, holy crap, they're bringing Boba Fett into the fold in this episode. Unfortunately, it's not Boba Fett. It is just another Mandalorian. And there's a bunch of Mandalorians that come in to save this town, and they adopt him into Mandalore, or the Mandalorian culture, I guess, as a foundling. So we kind of get, more of his backstory, his origin story, I would say. This is where it gets into just action-packed craziness because they're pinned down, the stormtroopers and Moff Gideon. They're like, oh, we're gonna give you till nightfall, blah blah blah. But then the IG droid is just tearing through town on this speeder, doing drive-bys. He's shooting from the speeder, he's shooting from his hip, and he very much kind of relieves them of this stress on them being pinned down. So he is just kicking ass. The speeder blows up, and that is probably the first action-packed scene in this episode. This one I think is, again, a great finish to this series. So they're just kicking ass, and then they kind of move along, and they go down into the sewers or wherever the Mandalorians were hiding out, and find out that they were essentially wiped out by the stormtroopers and the Imperials that showed up to this town. So that very much kind of pisses off the Mandalorian and whatnot. Let's rewind a little bit. So the Mandalorian is very much injured. They think he's just gonna leave himself be. There's a flame trooper coming in. Baby Yoda, straight up Gandalf the Great's like, you shall not pass, and totally blocks this fire from consuming his buddies and pushes the fire back on the flame trooper. So that was a very cool visual with just flames all around and little baby Yoda with his hands up like that. That was really cool. But then, you know, going into that, the Mandalorian is actually damaged and is hurt, and we see the IG droid take his helmet off. And I was hoping for the reveal of Pedro Pascal's face to be kind of like decrepit and tore up, basically like a Darth Vader in episode 6. Instead, it's just kind of him. It's him with a little bit of blood. So I thought, I don't know what I had in my mind thinking what the reveal of under that helmet would be. It's fine, whatever. Oh, another thing, in that big fight, the Mandalorian picks up and kind of Rambo shoots it again, kind of like episode 1. So reminiscent of that episode 1 to this episode. But moving on, they very much kind of get away, and they find out that there's a bunch of stormtroopers that are going to take them over. And the IG droid, I love this scene because it very much was reminiscent of Terminator 2 and kind of this like sacrifice for them. But we had seen at the beginning of this season the thermal detonator in his chest, and he sacrifices himself to save these people, and the explosion and whatnot is phenomenal. Yeah, this episode is seriously just action-packed and a lot of satisfying things. You can kind of see that I think that they spent a lot of the budget on this episode, actually. And another cool thing is video games I'd been mentioning all throughout this season. It's very much kind of video game upgrades and, you know, new equipment and new weapons. And in this one, I love how the Mandalorians kind of use this old kind of terminology for their items, you know, morning or whistling birds or whatever for those missiles. But then we get the rising phoenix, which is aka a jetpack. So the Mandalorian now has a jetpack. He is fully upgraded, and he uses that to take down Moff Gideon in this episode in a TIE fighter. And I think that is maybe one of the coolest action-packed scenes of this whole season so far, is the Mandalorian attaching onto this TIE fighter, the TIE fighter flying through the air, and eventually it goes down and he has the jetpack. And this end of the episode, there's two different really cool things. Is the Mandalorian, he gets his signet and he's kind of bonded to Baby Yoda now to escort Baby Yoda off to find his species or his family, or sort of be a mentor. So that's going to be probably the main crux going through this whole series, is taking this Baby Yoda and guiding him to his family and whatnot. So it's going to be this kind of like bigger wolf, young cub storyline throughout the rest of the series, I think. But Moff Gideon, his TIE fighter goes down, it explodes, you think that that's the end of it, but it's like a last 5 to 10 second type thing, and you see this blade cut through the wreckage of the TIE fighter, and my understanding, it looks like it's the black lightsaber or some sort of blade that I've seen in Rebels. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of that, but it very much looks like this dark black lightsaber, which is cool to see on that because he's standing on top of his TIE fighter holding this blade, and it could be a vibro blade or whatever it is earlier in the episode and also in Star Wars canon, but it very much, I think it is that dark lightsaber, dark blade and whatnot. So I think that he is still alive, and he's going to be going after Carl Weathers and Cara Dune, but also after the Mandalorian. So I like how it very much set these things up. I'm going to have a whole season review of this, but I still am a little confused on who showed up at the end of episode 5. But man, this episode is action-packed. There's a lot of crazy things. I think it very much ties things up. And again, like I said, action-packed and a lot of nods here or there to cool things. And I am very, very curious on where this is going to lead things. Anyways, guys, that is episode 8, the full breakdown. I'm sorry for the water heater. Luckily, it turned off at the end of this. But what did you guys think of episode 8? Did this very much tie things up for yourself, or was it a little lackluster? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Watch some more videos up there, you know, movie reviews, trailer reactions, fun comedy skits. I'm going to be having a whole Mandalorian episode 1, or not episode 1, season 1 review right after this probably. But follow all of my social media, click that subscribe button, like this video, share this video out. It seriously helps me. And until next time, I'll see you later.